God is good, amen. Love it. We are in our series in the book of Hebrews, and if I can get my ducks in a row, you'd think I'd get that together before I got up here. But sometimes, we all have a little bit of mishaps, and it just happens to be that today my brain is as scattered as a pan of scrambled eggs. But I'll get there and I'll get back. And mainly, there are some problems in our society that we don't like to address, right? There are things that are happening in the world that unfortunately they influence our behaviors, our thinking, our teachings, the way that we operate, the way that we handle situations. Like for instance, one of the things that our society struggles with that we inherently tend to deal with as well as materialism, consumerism. And one of the effects of consumerism is instant gratification, convenience, what I want and what I want to get out of it. How can I make this easier for my life? And unfortunately, there is a society of instant gratification oriented people. I've got to have it now, fast. I've got to feel that need. I'm thirsty. I got to do this. I'm hungry and I don't want to go out. Guess what? DoorDash. I don't want to go to the store and buy it. Guess what? Amazon, right? Everybody's got those. Everybody's got Amazon, fast food. Everybody's got texting. You want to talk to somebody, but you don't want to talk to them on the phone like a normal person. This is my generation's problem. Well, we'll just text them, right? We'll just text them, then they can respond when they want to respond, but hopefully they respond quickly, right? Or I want to ask this question so I can get it out of my mind so I don't have to. And there's this instant gratification orientation that revolves around our life. What can I do to make this more convenient? What can I do to fill that need, right? What can I do? How many times are you on the internet, right? And you're scrolling through, you're looking at something on the internet, and all of a sudden you see a word and it takes your mind down a rabbit hole you never expected to go down. You're searching this and looking at this, and you're totally off the task that you were originally there to do. And then you come back and you play and you go back to work, and then it happens again, and it happens 3 or 4. Imagine how much more productive we'd be, folks, if we didn't have that little instant gratification forest monkey pulling us off into the dark forest to play in the whatever we want to do. That's just how our minds work. And a symptom, right, a real problem of all of these things that we're dealing with is that we expect that to go for everything. And we've got all these things in our life. No wonder we're restless. No wonder we can't wrap our minds around what's supposed to be happening. No wonder we have no patience. No wonder. No wonder we're going to wait for things. Oh man, I got to wait 30 minutes for my food. Yeah. Imagine that. I got to wait a day, 24 hours for they didn't deliver. My wife and I are sitting there on Friday, and the FedEx guy came up 3 times. Okay, the FedEx guy 3 times. We live upstairs. We don't know when somebody's coming on FedEx. We don't have a window on one side of our apartment. We don't have a window, so we can't exactly see out into the parking lot. Okay, so we're not always like looking out the windows like, oh, there's the FedEx guy. That's just not how it operates, right? So 3 times this guy comes up, finally leaves a notice. He says, if you don't come get your package, right? We're done delivering it to you. If you don't come get your package at the FedEx office, we're going to ship it back to the sender. Oh man, we were so frustrated. Why are they doing this? Why is this? Well, it's inconvenient, right? We didn't see it. We don't know how to be patient in those situations. We're going like, you know what? Hey, we missed it. It happens. That's life. That's how things are. But we cannot transfer that way of thinking into our faith. We cannot look at God the same way we look at the world, the same way we're impatient with the things that happen within the world. We cannot be that way with God. Not to mention the fact that even if you're not, it's not your timeline is not God's timeline, and God is going to take care of what God is going to take care of when God takes care of it, whether you like it or not. But what makes the process easier And this is kind of the bottom line, and the thing we really need to remember, that we need to must remain faithful to the promise even when we don't see it done. When we don't see it happening right now like we think it should, or, we get stuck into these crazy conspiracy. Well, I'm seeing signs, they're all over, and guess what? Jesus is coming back soon. They've been saying that for 2,000 years. We know it's not going to happen when it happens. But despite the fact that we don't know the exact time or hour or day or season or month when Jesus is going to return, this can be true for all of us. We must remain faithful to the promise even when we don't see it done. It's what the Hebrew writer's trying to communicate throughout the book to this group of people who's thinking about going back to Judaism. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Go back to the beginning of the book of Hebrews. I mean, just the language that he uses to say, look, you have to pay attention to this. God spoke long ago by the Father in the prophets, right? Has in these last days spoken to us by his Son. Well, God doesn't speak. What do you mean, people? Let me begin the message by telling you that God spoke. Our God is not like other gods. He is not mute. He speaks. And you know this, you're aware of this when you read the Old Testament scriptures. God spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets. In these last days, you want to know what's come? You want to know what's here? You want to know who to listen to? It's his Son, Jesus, who you follow, and you're thinking about returning? What are you thinking? Look at another one, chapter 2 and verse 2. This is important because then he switches focus, right? From, hey, God spoke, to pay attention to what happens with his messengers, these angelic beings. For if the words spoken through angels proved unalterable. You know what he's referring to is the promises. The promises that God gave to Abraham, the promises that God gave to all of these prophets and these servants of what was going to happen and what was going to take place. If the words spoken through angels, the promises spoken through angels proved unalterable, every transgression and disobedience received a just penalty. Here's 4:1-2, where he says something similar. Therefore, let us fear if, while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you may have seemed to come short of it. For indeed we have had good news preached, just as they also. But the word they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. The argument is clear. You have to listen. You have to pay attention. One more. Chapter 6, 9 through 11. Here's what the argument he's going to be making that he wants us to understand. You have to absorb this type of thing. That just because God isn't doing what you think he should do right now doesn't mean he's not working on it. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have the right time in the right place, in the right... God's timing, we all know this, it's impeccable. God's timing, well, I think it should happen right now. Wait. It's timing. You ever see those videos on Facebook, the guy shooting the bow, and he swings this little arrow, this little circle on a string, right? And he's standing about 20 yards away, and he pulls his bow back, and he lets it fire, and he hits the ring, and he smacks it. And then he shoots a second one, and he tags the back of the first arrow that he did the first time. When we're talking about timing and targets, I mean, man, it's all timing, right? But the way that we see time and the way that God sees time are two different things. He says, God is not so unjust as to forget your work. Don't think that God, just because he isn't saying anything or thinking anything, has forgotten about you. Right? And having ministered and still ministering to the saints. And we desire that each of you show the same diligence so as to realize the full assurance of hope until the end. In other words, don't give up. So that you will not be sluggish, but imitators of those who through what? Faith and what? Patience. Inherit the promises. Through faith and patience. So that instant gratification orientation that you're struggling with in your life, I mean, we've got to get a hold of that. I know I'm not the only one that deals with that. I know I'm not the only one that struggles with, well, just wait. Let it play out, see what happens, and then see what God does in the midst of that. Instead of, boom, I'm going to jump on it. I have no patience, right? What is God doing? What is God going to do? And this is one of the angles that he begins to argue in Hebrews chapter 11. Is this idea, he's saying, by faith, by faith, by faith. You have to have faith. It's the necessary component. It's the non-negotiable requirement. It's the incorruptible adhesive for our relationship with God. And we know that it's required, and we also know that what is required of us will produce in us. That it's not something that God just magically expects us to have, but he's willing to put himself out there and show us, look, I'm worthy of your trust. Even when we're in skeptical situations, he's making these arguments from very plain places. We cannot, without faith, Hebrews 11:6, it is impossible to please him. And that's what we're aiming for. He says, you've got to remember what that is. And despite not seeing the promises, let me work you through these patriarchs and these people who worked with God before there ever was a law or a system or an organization to give this stuff names or ideas or something for you to grasp on. These people, they lived by faith. And he begins to talk about Abraham. By faith, Abraham. I mean, we all know the story. We've read the story. We've looked at the story. We understand the story in multiple occasions and in multiple places within the writings of Paul and the New Testament teachers. Abraham is referenced as a father of faith. The founder, he's the one that really put a name to it. In the relationship, by faith, Abraham, when he was what? Called. Obeyed by going out to a place which he was to receive an inheritance. He went out not knowing where he was going. The essence right here, the thing we have to understand is when we're called, we must obey. What are we called? What are we called by? What are we called to obey? And I don't want us to be afraid of this word obedience, because a lot of times we think about it in reference to, enslaving ourselves to, somebody who pays our mortgage or pays our, helps our finance. That's not what we're talking about in obedience. We're talking about obedience in the sense, a willing obedience, not an obedience that's by, I feel like I have to do it or I'm going to lose my life kind of thing. This is not the idea that we're entrenching. It's something that I choose to do. This is something that Abraham chose to do. He was called. God called him out. And he obeyed in his actions. Not in his thoughts. It's not a thought thing. It's not he didn't attend a synagogue or a church. The way that he obeyed, the way that he had faith, was he said, okay, I'll go. You say this, I believe you, I'll go. There's chapter 1. We know the other chapters that have to do with Abraham's faith, sacrificing his son on the altar. Right? By faith, look at this. He lived as an alien in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, fellow heirs of the same promise. When God had said, many descendants shall have, as many as the seashore, the stars in the sky, he wasn't lying. And those were inheritors of the promise, but they didn't see it fulfilled. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? What is that going to become? I don't understand. But I know that God, when he promises something, is not going to back down. He's trying to argue from a standpoint of, look, you're thinking about walking away. You're thinking about moving away from Jesus. You're thinking about going to something, about going back to the way things were before. Are you crazy? Because you don't see it happening right now, right when you want it to, right when you think it should. You're gonna move yourself back. He's like, look at these people. They did it by faith. And they didn't see anything for a long time. They didn't see anything come to fruition. And they still had faith. Verses 10 and 11. For he was looking for a city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. He wasn't looking for a place here. He was going, looking, knowing, understanding that God had something better in mind. Maybe something that we couldn't see, maybe something that we couldn't understand, but it wasn't something tangible, something materialistic. He says, by faith, look, this is a part of the story. By faith, even Sarah herself received the ability, received the power, received the strength. God gave her that ability to conceive, and even beyond the proper time of life, she considered him faithful who had promised. God's track record. What is it? What does it look like? If we were to go throughout the scriptures and just look at the Hebrew people, what's the track record of God? Does he fail? Does he not keep his word? Is he human in that way? Like we are, you ever make a promise and not follow through? You ever say something you couldn't live up to? You ever built your character bigger than you actually were? And then failed to represent when the time came for you to do that? We fail in that way. We're inconsistent in that way. But God is so unbelievably consistent. So the consistency is, here's the reason for trust. Not only did you grow up in it, not only were you Jewish kids and went to synagogue every Sunday and participated in Jewish schools, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 throughout your life. But even if you weren't, the track record, the consistency of God calls for faith. I've seen it previously. I know what will happen futuristically. I don't have anything to worry about. I don't have anything to think about. She considered him faithful who had promised. Why? Because in that process of them taking those leaps, God had provided what they needed. Well, often we're too scared to take a step. We're too afraid of things. What's the world going to be like tomorrow? How's this going to be? How's that going to be? What does the church look like if we don't do this and if we do this and we don't do that? What if we become this? What if we become what if blah, blah, blah? We have all sorts of fears that we hang on a sign in the foyer to tell people when they walk in the door, we're scared. What are we scared of? We got the God who created the universe on our side. What is impossible, brethren? What is impossible for us to accomplish with a God that big? What are we holding back on? Where is our confidence? And why does our fear overshadow our faith? This is a passage. When we talk about Abraham and Isaac and Sarah, people we should aspire to. In a lot of ways, the exception. But this is attainable. This kind of faith where he's just like, you know what? I mean, I see what God's word says about X, Y, and Z. What can I do to live that out? How it says, make disciples of all nations. How do I do that? Where's my confidence? I mean, do I know how to do that? You ever ask yourself those questions? I know when I was a very new Christian, I was like, well, how do I make disciples? How do I go out and I share the gospel with people? I mean, not only is that a fear, but it's like I'm scared. I'm double scared because not only do I not know how to do it, I'm afraid to do it because I'm afraid to get rejected. What are we afraid of when we see people walk into our assemblies? Are we looking for an opportunity outside of this sermon, because you can't do it every week, to take a step of courage and share the gospel? It's this simple. Man had a problem, God made a way. Everybody can remember that. Man had a problem, God made a way. Okay, man had a problem. Yeah, man has a sin problem. God made a way. How did he make a way? Jesus. He made a way. And then all the other stuff comes with that. But how can we not teach that? How can we not testify to the things that God has done in our life when we see them walk in? Why are we not taking an opportunity to build a relationship, make a connection, give ourselves a chance to do what God has asked us to do in making disciples? That takes a tremendous amount of faith to believe that God's message is important enough for us to step outside of the fear and the discomfort. Because that's what Abraham and Sarah did. They stepped outside of a comfortable life. They stepped outside of a convenient life to walk in their convictions, in their faith of the Lord. He says, look, therefore there was even born to one man, hit to him as good as dead, at that as many descendants as a star, the number stars of heaven in the number, and in a numeral as the sand which is by the seashore. All these died in faith, without receiving the promises, but having seen them and having welcomed them from a distance, and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on earth. We don't belong here. We don't belong to the world. We belong to God. And the end goal for us is the same end goal that Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Jacob, Moses and David and Gideon, to die in faith. Having not seen the promises, but having seen them and having welcomed them from a distance, having confessed that we are strangers and exiles on the earth. To put ourselves in the shoes of other people and say, you know what? It's me too. I may not see it. I may not understand it. One day I will. One day I'll understand more than I ever thought I could. But right now, my goal is to step in faith and live in faith and die in faith. And to continue that road for my Lord, my Master. That is the top priority, brethren. That has to be the thing we chase. Not money and materialism and all the other things of life. We need to chase the Lord. I want to be like Him. All those things are great. God has blessed me. But that's who I want to be like. That is an intangible that I cannot, without conscious and diligent effort, attain. Like I can with many of the other things in the world. I have to seek that. I have to be that. I have to look at that. I have to look to that. I have to become that if I want to live and die in faith and in trust of the promises of my Lord. He doesn't stop there. For those who say such things, make it clear, for they are seeking a country of their own. And indeed, if they had been thinking of that country from which they went out, they would have had an opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them. You know what this verse makes me immediately think of? It's Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 39. For we are not of those who shrink back. But if we shrink back, my soul has no pleasure in Him. He is not ashamed to be their God, for He has prepared a city for them. Those who live in faith, yes, that's what I want. So what is the solution to this problem we have, this instant gratification orientation, this mindset, this ideology that it has to happen now when I want it to happen, and I can't have patience till it gets there. We have to live with something bigger in our minds, and we often don't. We just don't. It's a reality and a fact of life. But if we can grasp this, if we can wrap this around in our minds and say, yes, though I haven't seen the promise get done, I have to remain faithful to the promise as it will be done. We have to live with eternity in mind. That's a hard concept for us to grasp. I understand that. Eternity, think about never dying. You just cannot, no matter how I think about God and Him being eternal, I cannot to this day wrap my mind around a all-existing, constant existing, never ceasing to exist, no point of end or beginning God. I just can't wrap my mind around that concept. It is unfathomable to me. But I know that one day when I see Him, I will understand. All that stuff I can't grasp with my physical mind, with my flesh. When I see Him, I will understand. But right now, I need to live with a bigger picture. I need to live with a bigger vision than is naturally instilled in me. What's naturally instilled in me is a tendency to be short-sighted, to only see what's right here and what's now. And so I allow fear to cripple me. Yeah, your preacher. I only imagine what it does to you. I only imagine what you let get to you, what you let stop you. But you can have the courage to live in faith, to speak in faith, to share in faith. If you live with this concept in mind, eternity, that's where I'm going, that's where I want to be. I want it to be crowded with people. I don't care if they all think exactly the same. I want everybody to be there. I don't care. If they get there and they don't do it my way, fantastic, great. I love that. I want it to be crowded. I have to live with that mindset of I'm going to share the gospel with every breathing person I can possibly share it with. And to have the courage to do that, I have to believe in the consistency of the promises of God. I cannot live with my own short-sighted understanding of life. I have to believe that God has something bigger and better waiting, not just for me, for the church, for the world, for people that don't yet know Him, that will come to. The tragedies that happen in our world this week. You see those things? You scroll on social media, they plague your mind. Why? He's living with something bigger in mind than just, what's here and now? What's happening? You know what? We could sit here and talk about it all day long. My message and my challenge to you is you have to live with eternity in mind. Because if you live with eternity in mind, you will have the confidence to do anything you set your mind to do for the kingdom of God. It means we have to think about a few things. It means we have to understand a few things. Number one, we have to focus on the future, what is coming. Not just what we think is coming, what might come, what might not come. Focus on the future. Where am I going? We're all going to die. Where do I want to go? How do I live my life to get there? Focus on the future. Number two, we need to embrace a life of obedience and trust. This is not an uncaring, unloving, angry, misogynistic, rigid, legalistic God trying to control you to make you do what He wants you to do because you're His puppets. It's not the way the world paints Him. Can we understand that? The way the world paints our God is unbelievably blasphemous. Because the God that I know is compassionate and kind and loving and looking for a relationship with me, not waiting to trap me in my sin. No, that's the devil's job. God is ready to forgive. And in order for me to get there, to live that life in the future, I have to embrace a life of obedience and trust. When God says it, I got to go. And I got to trust that He's going to work it out. And I got to trust that He's going to make it right. And I got to trust that He's going to put it where it needs to be. And I have to have faith that God is going to put things where they need to be for me so I don't have to, I just got to go. I got to go. I got to be out there. I got to embrace that. And when you live comfortably, that's really difficult. To embrace a life of obedience and trust is challenging. Last one. Acknowledge that God's timeline isn't yours. It isn't ours. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know what it's going to become. We don't know what's going to happen. You can spend your life worrying about what's going to happen in the political world. You can spend your life worrying about what the next president or the current president or the Congress or the senators or all of those things are going to do, or you can worry about what God is doing right now amongst people of faith. You can worry about all those things. You can worry about what somebody, blah, 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 whatever. This needs to happen now, that needs to happen. God's timing isn't ours. God's timing is impeccable. To the best of timing you've ever seen on this earth, God is better. And if we understand that and recognize that God isn't always doing or thinking the way that we're doing or thinking, but that we can put ourselves in a place to see how His will is being done, then we can place ourselves in the proper place to acknowledge His timeline isn't ours, to look to the future, and to embrace a life of trust and obedience. It's my challenge to you. It's a challenge to all of us. Are we looking for a place that's better than where we are right now? And if that is the case, if the case is for us that we're in a place where we've received the gospel and we love Jesus and we want the world to know, my challenge to you this morning as we sing an invitation song is to step outside your comfort zone and go tell someone what you know about Jesus. Don't wait for me to do it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Don't wait for somebody else to say it. You find the opportunity and you do it. You have the courage to share your faith. Maybe you're in a place where you're struggling with sin. I don't know. I don't know what your life's like. I don't know what's, I really should. We should know what's going on in each other's lives. We should be consciously aware of what's happening with everybody in this room, with everybody in this body. And we should care. We should care deeply. Jesus tells us, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. We should be consciously aware of the things that people in our body are struggling with. You haven't said anything to anybody, you're bearing that alone. You don't have to. You can come and tell me, you can come and sit on the front pew if that's what makes you feel comfortable, but you don't have to bear that sin alone. You don't have to bear that thing that you think you need to bear. You think that nobody will understand. You think that everybody will judge you for. You don't have to bear that alone. And if somebody judges you, it says more about them than it does about you. So this morning, if you have a need, we're going to sing a song of invitation. And we want to encourage everybody to, in your own way, respond of some sort. Do what you need to do. Get done what you need to get done. Make right what you need to get right. As we stand and sing.